You know, there's something deeply comforting about a plate of warm leftovers. It feels thrifty, convenient, a taste of yesterday's happy meal without the effort. We've all done it. Scooped out that bit of last night's curry, that leftover rice from takeout, or perhaps some cooked greens, and popped it in the microwave or oven. It's just part of life, isn't it? But what if I told you that this simple, everyday habit, with certain common foods, might be doing more than just warming up your dinner? What if it could be subtly contributing to risks you really want to avoid as you get older? Things like cognitive decline, the kind of changes that can lead to dementia, or even increasing your vulnerability to certain forms of cancer over time. It sounds alarming. I know. And it's not about causing panic. It's about awareness. It's a painful reality that sometimes the most innocent-seeming actions can have unintended long-term consequences for our health. Consequences that creep up on us quietly. The secret isn't in some rare, exotic ingredient. It's often right there on our plates, in the leftovers we thought we were managing correctly. In this video, we're going to gently uncover the potential risks associated with reheating just 5 common foods and, more importantly, talk about how to handle them safely to protect your long-term health, especially your brain and your body's defenses. Stay with me, because watching to the end will reveal something that might genuinely surprise you about keeping yourself vibrant and healthy. Let's start with something many of us eat regularly. A true staple in kitchens around the world: rice. Now, rice itself is perfectly healthy when cooked properly. But the danger with reheating rice isn't usually about the reheating process itself as much as what can happen before it gets reheated. And that's where a common bacterium called Bacillus cereus comes into play. This little organism is often present in uncooked rice. And while cooking kills the active bacteria, it can leave behind spores. These spores are hardy little things, tough enough to survive the cooking process. If cooked rice is left standing at room temperature for too long, even just a couple of hours, these spores can wake up, multiply, and start producing toxins. And it's these toxins, not the bacteria themselves, that are the problem. Reheating the rice, even to a high temperature, often won't destroy these toxins. You can heat that rice till it's steaming hot, but if the toxins are there, they stay there. Now, you might be thinking, what does a little food poisoning bug have to do with cancer or dementia? That's a very fair question. While the immediate effect of Bacillus cereus toxins is usually food poisoning, sickness and diarrhea, repeated exposure to foodborne pathogens and their toxins, or even just the stress they put on your digestive system, can contribute to chronic inflammation. Inflammation is a bit of a buzzword these days, but for good reason: low grade. Persistent inflammation throughout the body is increasingly linked to a host of chronic diseases, including neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and certain types of cancer. Your gut health is intimately connected to your overall health, including your immune system and even your brain function. When your gut is constantly battling unfriendly bacteria or toxins, it creates systemic stress and inflammation. Over years and decades, this chronic inflammation can damage cells and DNA, potentially paving the way for disease. It weakens your body's natural defenses and repair mechanisms. So, the risk with rice isn't just an upset stomach tonight. It's the cumulative effect of improper handling contributing to a state of chronic low-level stress in your body. For us over 60, our bodies are often less resilient than they once were. Our immune systems might not be as quick to bounce back. And accumulated damage from years of various exposures becomes more significant. Minimizing unnecessary inflammatory triggers, like toxins from improperly stored food, becomes even more crucial. Think about how you usually handle leftover rice. Do you leave it on the counter while you finish dinner or clean up? Do you sometimes forget to put it in the fridge right away? It's easy to do. Life gets busy. But that period between cooling down enough to handle and getting into the cold environment of the fridge is prime time for those Bacillus cereus spores to activate and start multiplying. The warmer it is, the faster they work. So, the practical advice for rice is simple, but critical speed is your friend. Once you've served the rice, cool any leftovers as quickly as possible. Divide large portions into smaller containers so they cool faster. Get them into the refrigerator within 1 hour. Or, ideally, even sooner. Especially if your kitchen is warm. When you reheat it, make sure it's heated thoroughly, steaming hot all the way through, to kill any active bacteria that might have developed before it went into the fridge. Though remember, this won't get rid of preformed toxins, and only reheat it once. Repeated reheating increases the chances of hitting those dangerous temperature zones where bacteria thrive. Portion out only what you need to reheat. If in doubt, it's better to discard it than take the risk. This might seem like a small thing, but consistent good practice here reduces a potential source of toxins and inflammation in your diet over the long term. So it's about giving your body one less thing to fight against, freeing up its resources to protect against bigger threats. Now, moving from grains to something else, we often reheat cooked meats like chicken, beef, or pork. These are protein-rich foods, and while protein is essential for muscle maintenance and overall health, reheating cooked meat requires care, primarily because of the risk of bacterial contamination and the potential for changes in the protein structure itself, depending on how it's done. Just like with rice, improper cooling and storage of cooked meat are significant risk factors for bacterial growth, such as Salmonella or E. coli. Leaving cooked meat out at room temperature allows these bacteria, which might be present at low levels even after cooking, to multiply rapidly. Reheating then needs to be done very thoroughly to kill these pathogens. If the meat isn't heated all the way through, particularly in the thickest parts, pockets of dangerous bacteria can survive. Repeatedly heating meat can also change its protein structure, sometimes making it harder to digest. For some people, especially as we age, our digestive systems can become a little less robust. Protein that isn't properly broken down can ferment in the gut, leading to discomfort, bloating, and gas. While not directly linked to cancer or dementia in the same way toxins or inflammation might be, chronic digestive distress and poor nutrient absorption do impact overall health and can contribute to systemic inflammation. Furthermore, some studies suggest that high-temperature reheating, especially in microwaves, can potentially form harmful compounds in certain meats, though this area of research is complex and often debated. For instance, heterocyclic amines, HCAs, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, are compounds that can form when meat is cooked at high temperatures, like grilling or frying, and some research links these to increased cancer risk. While reheating itself might not be the primary source compared to initial cooking methods, improper reheating that involves further high-temperature exposure could theoretically add to this burden over time. The key here is managing the total exposure to potential carcinogens and inflammatory triggers throughout the food chain, from cooking to storing to reheating. So, for cooked meats, the advice is similar to rice in terms of speed and thoroughness. Cool meat leftovers quickly and refrigerate within an hour or two. When reheating, ensure it reaches an internal temperature high enough to kill bacteria, ideally 165 degrees or 74°. Sorry. Use a food thermometer if you want to be certain, especially for poultry. Make sure there are no cold spots. And again, avoid multiple reheating cycles and portion out what you need. If you're reheating a large joint of meat, slicing it thinly before reheating can help ensure it heats evenly and quickly. Using methods like oven reheating with a little liquid to prevent drying can be better than harsh microwaving, which can heat unevenly. This careful approach minimizes the risk of consuming harmful bacteria or compounds that, over years, could contribute to inflammation and cellular damage. It's about treating your body with respect by being mindful of what you're putting into it, even when it comes to leftovers. Now that we've discussed being cautious with rice and cooked meats, let's turn our attention to another category of food that poses potential issues when reheated: leafy greens like spinach, kale, and even root vegetables high in nitrates like beetroot. These vegetables are incredibly nutritious and should be a staple in your diet. They are packed with vitamins, minerals, and fiber. However, they naturally contain nitrates. Nitrates themselves are generally considered harmless. The potential issue arises when nitrates are converted into nitrites, and then potentially into nitrosamines. This conversion can happen through the action of bacteria if the vegetables are stored improperly, or sometimes through the reheating process itself, especially if done at high temperatures or repeatedly. Nitrosamines are compounds that have been linked to an increased risk of certain cancers in animal studies, and there are concerns about their potential impact on human health, particularly in the digestive system. Think about that leftover spinach dish. If it's cooked and then left sitting out, bacteria that naturally occur in the environment can start working on those nitrates, converting them to nitrites. When you then reheat the spinach, especially if you heat it strongly, these nitrites can combine with other compounds present to form nitrosamines. While the levels of nitrosamines from reheating vegetables might be low, the concern is about cumulative exposure over a lifetime. For someone regularly eating reheated leafy greens, this could add to their overall burden of potential carcinogens. Furthermore, like with other foods, improper storage of cooked vegetables can lead to bacterial growth, adding another layer of risk related to toxins and potential gut irritation and inflammation. For older adults, whose digestive systems may be more sensitive and whose bodies may be less efficient at detoxifying harmful substances, minimizing this potential source of exposure is a sensible precaution. So, the recommendation for cooked leafy greens and high nitrate vegetables like beetroot is often to eat them fresh after cooking if possible, if you must save leftovers. Cool them down very quickly and store them in the refrigerator. When reheating, try to reheat only the amount you plan to eat, and do it thoroughly but gently. Some sources even suggest avoiding reheating them altogether, especially for vulnerable groups like infants and the elderly, due to the potential for nitrite formation, which can cause a specific type of blood disorder in infants, though this is less of a direct cancer dementia link than the nitrosamine concern. For our purposes, focusing on the long-term risk, the best approach is careful handling. If you cook a large batch of soup or stew containing these vegetables, cool and refrigerate it promptly. When reheating, ensure it bubbles all the way through. But for standalone portions of cooked spinach or kale, consuming them freshly cooked is the safest bet to minimize potential nitrate to nitrite to nitrosamine conversion. It's a small adjustment, perhaps just cooking smaller portions of these vegetables for a single meal. But it's another way to subtly reduce your exposure to compounds that could potentially increase your risk factors over many years. It's about making informed choices, even about seemingly healthy foods, when it comes to leftovers. Now, let's consider potatoes. Boiled, roasted, mashed. Potatoes are a comfort food classic. The main concerns with reheating potatoes center around how they are stored after cooking and a potential issue with a compound called solanine, though that's more about storage before cooking, and the risks associated with bacterial growth, particularly Clostridium botulinum, which is a much more serious threat than Bacillus cereus. Cooked potatoes, especially baked potatoes wrapped in foil, can create an anaerobic environment without oxygen if not cooled properly. This is the perfect breeding ground for Clostridium botulinum, the bacteria that produces the potentially deadly toxin causing botulism. While rare, botulism is extremely serious. The spores can survive cooking if a cooked potato is left at room temperature, particularly wrapped tightly. The spores can germinate and produce toxin. Reheating the potato won't necessarily destroy this toxin. Again, you might wonder about the link to cancer or dementia. Botulism itself is an acute neurological emergency, not a chronic condition like dementia. However, the broader point is about safe food handling practices preventing exposure to harmful substances that stress the body and nervous system. Any severe foodborne illness, including botulism, can have lingering health effects and represents a major shock to the system, while not a direct cause of cancer or dementia. Avoiding such illnesses is fundamental to preserving overall health and resilience as we age. Another point sometimes raised with potatoes relates to how the starch changes upon cooling and reheating. Cooked potatoes, when cooled, develop something called resistant starch. For most people, this is actually beneficial. It acts like fiber, feeding good gut bacteria. But for some individuals, particularly those with sensitive digestive systems or conditions like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, large amounts of resistant starch can cause significant digestive upset, fermentation, and bloating. As discussed before, chronic gut issues and dysbiosis and imbalance in gut bacteria can contribute to systemic inflammation, which is a risk factor for chronic diseases. while not a direct reheating issue. It's worth mentioning how reheating can affect the food's properties in ways that might impact your body differently, especially as you get older. So, for potatoes, the most critical advice is about the Clostridium botulinum risk if you bake potatoes, especially in foil. Remove them from the foil immediately after cooking and either eat them or refrigerate them quickly. Do not leave them wrapped in foil at room temperature. Any cooked potatoes should be cooled rapidly and refrigerated within an hour or two. When reheating, heat them thoroughly until steaming hot throughout. Mashed potatoes or roasted potatoes need the same care, while the resistant starch effect isn't a safety issue in the same way. If you find reheated potatoes cause digestive discomfort, it might be better to eat them freshly cooked or in smaller quantities when reheated. Prioritizing quick cooling and refrigeration is key to avoiding the dangerous bacterial risk associated with potatoes. It's another example of how simple kitchen habits can have profound implications for our safety and long-term well-being. Finally, let's talk about eggs. Cooked eggs, whether scrambled, boiled, or in quiches or casseroles, are another common leftover. The primary concern with reheating eggs revolves around the risk of bacterial contamination, mainly Salmonella. Eggs are prone to bacterial growth if not handled and stored correctly. If cooked egg dishes are left at room temperature for too long. Salmonella bacteria, which can sometimes be present in eggs, can multiply rapidly. Reheating needs to be done very thoroughly to kill these bacteria. Undercooked or improperly reheated eggs can therefore be a source of food poisoning, as with other foodborne illnesses. While acute Salmonella infection doesn't directly cause cancer or dementia, it puts significant stress on the body, weakens the immune system, and can contribute to inflammation. For older adults, food poisoning can be much more severe and lead to hospitalization and longer recovery times, impacting overall health and resilience. Some people also find that reheating eggs can change their texture and make them less palatable. While this isn't a health risk, it can make healthy leftovers less appealing from a nutritional perspective. Reheating eggs doesn't significantly degrade their protein quality, but the focus remains on safety. The practical steps for handling cooked egg leftovers are straightforward. Cool them quickly and refrigerate within 2 hours, ideally sooner. Store them in a sealed container. When reheating, ensure the eggs are heated thoroughly until steaming hot. Avoid leaving reheated egg dishes sitting out. As with other foods, reheating only once is recommended to minimize the time the food spends in the temperature danger zone where bacteria thrive and to ensure thorough heating each time. If an egg dish smells off or has been left out too long, it's safer to discard it. Choosing to eat egg dishes freshly prepared or being extremely diligent about cooling and reheating practices are the best ways to enjoy their nutritional benefits without taking unnecessary risks. So, we've covered rice, cooked meats, leafy greens and beets, potatoes, and eggs. 5 common foods that require a little extra care when it comes to reheating leftovers. It might seem like a lot to remember, but it boils down to a few key principles: rapid cooling, prompt refrigeration, thorough reheating, and often. Avoiding multiple reheating cycles. Remember the rice we talked about, and the importance of getting it into the fridge quickly to stop those Bacillus cereus spores, or the cooked meats, where thorough reheating is key to killing potential Salmonella or E. coli and the leafy greens, where mindful handling helps minimize the potential formation of nitrosamines. Don't forget the serious risk of Clostridium botulinum with improperly cooled potatoes, especially baked ones in foil, and the need for careful handling of eggs to avoid Salmonella. Making small changes in how we handle these common foods after cooking can make a big difference to your long-term health and happiness. It's not about being overly fearful. It's about being informed and taking simple, practical steps to reduce potential risks of foodborne illness, exposure to toxins, and chronic inflammation, all of which contribute to overall disease risk as we age, including risks related to cognitive decline and certain cancers. This isn't about giving up your favorite foods or the convenience of leftovers entirely. It's about being smart and safe. It's about recognizing that, as we get older, our bodies might be a little less forgiving, so giving them the best chance means being mindful of even the small things, like how we treat our leftovers. I hope this has been helpful. Perhaps shedding light on some kitchen habits you didn't realize could have health implications down the road. What are your thoughts? Do you have any specific practices for handling leftovers that you find helpful? Share your experiences and tips in the comments below. We can all learn from each other. If you found this information valuable, please give this video a like. It helps us reach more people who could benefit from these tips. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on more helpful content aimed at helping you live your best, healthiest life at every age. Thank you for watching. And remember, taking small, consistent steps towards better health is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. Live your best life at every age.